Alright, so today we're going over chapter 5, section 7, using congruent triangles. Alright, so how to prove two segments or angles are congruent. Well, first step is to prove two triangles, they are congruent. And the second one is state that the two parts of the congruent triangle using reason, corresponding parts, corresponding triangles. So CPCTC, that is, corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. That's just a lot of information. So I'll give you guys an example. If we have, let's say, triangle ABC, like that. And we have triangle FDE, exactly the same. We know that the triangles ABC is congruent to triangle DEF by ASA. But now we can show that angle B is congruent to angle E. I don't know if you guys noticed that it's based on the placement B and D. Sorry. So we can say that those two angles are congruent because they're the third angle, right, of the triangle. Or we can say is CPCTC. We can also say it by segment, so we can say the segment BC is congruent to segment EF. We can also say AB is congruent to segment DE. All of that by CPCTC. And I do mean what I said about the order BC, EF, right here. AB, DE, right here. And I messed up when, if you notice that B and E are both in the same corner, and B and E are both in the middle. When I said sorry before, I just messed up when I was speaking. But it does go by the placement. All of this is also by PCTC. So basically what we do here is we prove the two triangles are congruent, and after we prove both triangles are congruent, we can specify which part of the triangle is congruent with the other triangle. That's what the CPCTC is. At the end of the day is just saying that after the triangles are congruent, these parts of the triangle are congruent. So here's example 1. They gave you the PR bisects angle QPS. So that means that this angle right here is congruent to that angle right there. And they're telling us that PQ is congruent to PS, so those two. And because we know this line is reflective PR, we can say that PR is congruent to PR. Now, I filled in everything right now on the diagram, but we have to do a proof because they want us to prove that angle Q, so this angle right here, is congruent to angle S. We can tell just by what I filled in the drawing that this will be side angle side, the easiest way we can prove it. But we still have to do the proof. So statement, reason. Statement 1 is PR bisects angle QPS, and segment PQ is congruent to segment PS. That is the given. Now, based on what I draw, we can either say that PR is reflective to itself with equals PR, or we can say that angle QPR and angle SPR are congruent. I'm going to go ahead and do the segment first. PR is congruent to PR. This is the reflexive property. So POE, property of equality. Then I'm going to talk about the angle. So we have angle QPR is congruent to angle SPR. That is the definition of an angle bisector. And I'm going to create a new slide and rewrite this with a little more space so I can write step 4 and 5. So I'm going to rewrite it here. Statement. So I'm going to go in the same order I did for the previous slide. So PR bisects angle QPS, and PQ is congruent to PS. That's the given. Then we have the second step is PR is congruent to PR. That is the reflexive property. So POE. Then we have the third step, that is angle QPR is congruent to angle SPR. That is the definition of an angle bisector. Then we have the fourth step, which now we can prove the two triangles are congruent, which is triangle QPR is congruent to triangle SPR by the side angle side theorem. And then since both triangles are congruent, we can say angle Q is congruent to angle S by CPCTC. So when they're asking you for something specific to prove a segment, an angle, or something for a triangle is congruent, you first have to prove the triangle is congruent, and then at the end you can say that the angles, the segment, or whatever they're asking is congruent by CPCTC. All right, so we're doing example 2, which is given PR bisects angle QPS. So again, these two angles are congruent, and angle QRS. So these two angles are congruent. We want to prove that RQ, so this segment right here, RQ is congruent to RS. Now, if you guys notice, it would be the simplest way to prove that these two triangles are congruent first is by proving angle side angle, as that PR is reflexive. So again, I'm going to write the statement and then the reason. So the first one is always a given. So PR bisects angle QPS and angle QRS. That's given. Then we have the second one, which we can say that PR is congruent to PR. This one's a reflexive. I'm doing the reflexive first just to get out of the way the first thing, the line, the segment. Now you could have done the angles first, which is fine. I'm going to put them in the same step. Angle QPR is congruent to angle SPR, and then angle QRP is congruent by angle SRP. All of that is true by the definition of an angle bisector. After we figure that out, we can say the two triangles are congruent. So triangle QRP is congruent to triangle SRP by the angle side angle. And then lastly, we can say that because those two triangles are congruent, we can say that segment RQ is congruent to segment RS by CPCTC. So for example 3, we're giving that segment WX, so this one right here, is congruent to YZ, so that one up there. They're telling us that ZW, so this one right here, is also congruent to XY, so that one right there. They're asking us to prove that angle 1, so this one right here, is congruent to angle 2, that one right there. Awesome. we can prove that. If you guys notice, the only thing we're missing to prove these two triangles are congruent, it would be this side right here. So that will make it a side triangle. Since we figure out how we're going to solve it based on the diagram, let's go ahead and write the statement and reason. So statement, reason. Our first one, as always, is the given. So WX is congruent to YZ. And ZW is congruent to XY. That is the given. Now, after they already tell us that two of the sides are congruent, the only way for us to finish this is to prove the third side is congruent. So I'm going to go ahead and do ZX is congruent to ZX, again, those segments, by the reflexive property. Then after I prove that those three sides are congruent, I can say that both triangles, the triangle XWZ is congruent to triangle ZYX by the side. And lastly, since I proved those triangles are congruent, I can say angle 1 is congruent to angle 2 by CPCTC.